Good day, everyone. After understanding the relevant theories and laws concerning sexual harassment, we will proceed now in Lesson 22. I am Angelo Villamil, and together with me are Angelica Vinluan and Liezel Ventolero. Lesson 22 talks about women's issues in development. Lesson objectives. This module discusses the three distinctive models explaining how development affects women and why women and men are affected by development differently. Also, this module discusses the practical approaches to the development of women. At the end of this module, the student is are expected to understand fully the principle, model, and concept of with, what, and God, distinguish the three from each other, and determine the importance of these three principles to national development. Before going to the discussion proper, let us first unlock some definition of terms. We will be encountering these terms all throughout the discussion. First one is development. It is the process in which someone or something grows or changes and becomes advanced. Second, women in development. Approach of development projects that emerged in 1960s calling for treatment of women's issues in development projects. Third, women and development. This is an approach that comes from the perspective that equality will be essential to improving women's position but still frames changes in terms of providing women's access to productive sector. The fourth and the last one is gender and development. This was developed in 1980s, step away from both with and what, founded in social feminist ideology. The God approach holds that the oppression of women stems largely from a neoliberal focus on improving women's reproductive and productive capacities. So, we will now proceed to WID, or Women in Development. In 1970s, women are being left out of development. Thus, leads to the existence of WID, or Women in Development, to approach the issue concerning exclusion of women from development programs and approaches. The main task of this approach, or WID, is to improve women's access to resources and their participation in development. As aforementioned, women are left out or being neglected when it comes to developmental programs in 1970s because they see men or male sex as inferior to women, thus focusing on them because they see that men are the biggest contributor to the economic development of a country. So in with approach, the best way to improve women's position in society is the integration of women into development programs and planning. The with major achievement is the establishment of women in developmental structures or machineries. In this, uh, it depicts that women can do what men can do. The WID approach initially accepted existing social structures in the recipient country and look at how to better integrate women into existing development initiatives. WID or Women in Development serve as the primary step in making known to the international community that the sector of women has to be part of programs of development. As to say, the straightforward goal of WID approach was to increase the productivity and earnings of women. But this approach was highly criticized or received some criticisms from others because of its lackness. There are two criticisms that I have research about, and they are evident. The first criticism is that this approach doesn't address the root causes of gender inequalities. Yes, because it focuses only on the female sex or female aspect or female issues. The second one, it ignores the larger social process that affects women's lives and reproductive roles because it only focus on establishment of women in developmental programs. Um, Murag gaingon ra siya dito nga dapat ang mga bayi apil siya ani nga mga programs dili siya dapat i-neglect, but on the other side they did not dig deeper into women's lives and their reproductive roles, which can also be a big contributor to the economic aspect of a nation or a country. Now we will proceed on the women and development, or what we call WAD. So WAD adopted Marxist feminist approach. The main argument was that women had always been part of the development process. So this Marxist feminist approach, or the Marxist feminism, analyzes the way in which women are exploited through capitalism and individual ownership. This do means that women's liberation can only be achieved by dismantling the capitalist system in which they conferred much of women's labor is uncompensated. So this means that ang mga babae is undervalued and underpaid. So WAD asserts that women an economic had always been important economic actors. The work done by women inside and outside the household is critical to the maintenance of the society. So men women rather plays an important role both inside and outside the household. So makakontribute gyapon sila misag magpundo ra sila sa household o misag dili ra sila magpundo sa household. Like for example, women will be working outside to earn a living. The main focus of WAD is the is about the interaction between women and development process rather than purely on strategies to integrate women into development. So it it look uh, it is deeper, much more deeper than with which only focuses on integrating the women into developmental programs. Now, it it talks on the interaction of women and development processes. So, women are already established and they are looking into how women will be a contributor or how women will be integrated in the developmental process. So WAD viewed both men and women being affected by this because of disadvantages due to class and wealth distribution. It is clear that wealth was distributed more on higher classes rather than distributing it equally. So as to say, social status affects us or affects both men and women. So WAD viewed that global inequalities was the main problem of poor countries. Yes, it is true. So WAD was also criticized, same as with WAD was criticized for assuming that position of women in society will improve if there is an equitable international structures, which is hard to establish because of the already established social norm that men are more capable of doing something than women. So this concept cannot uh, cannot be cannot be removed in the society that easily, having or establishing the equitable international structures. But what debated that women are also plays a role in production. They are capable of doing the things that men can do. They can hand they can handle top management positions and the like. So women are not only capable of the reproduction or increasing the population, but also they are also productive, but they cannot be compared to men. So to continue, WAD underplays the role of patriarchy, thus undermining women's development, and doesn't adequately addresses the question of social relations between men and women and their impact on development. So WAD, so as so to speak and to summarize, WAD focuses strongly on class in practical project design and implementation. It it tends like with to group women irrespective of factors such as class divisions. So that is WAD. To continue now, we will proceed on gender and development, or the what we call GAD. GAD look at the impact of development of both men and women. The GAD approach in 1980s attempted to readdress the the problem using gender analysis to develop a broader view. This approach is more concerned with the relationships, the way in which men and women participate in development process rather than focusing on women's issues. Gender and development seeks to establish that men and women must participate in development programs to benefit from it equitably. So it is different from the first two, because the first two discusses only on women's issues, but now this there is no specific there is no specific gender, or kanang walay specific gender nga kanang iyang gipanigan, but it talks on both sexes, the men and women, and how they can contribute to the development and how to establish themselves in developmental programs or project. Now, God is not concerned with women exclusively, but with the way in which gender relations allot specific roles, responsibilities, and expectations between men and women. Therefore, development is all about deep and important changes to relations dealing with gender inequality within the society. So, also, one advantage of this gender and development approach is it recognizes the limitation that women can participate but not benefit directly from development. God is not concerned with women exclusively, to reiterate that. So God does goes farther than other approaches in emphasizing reproductive and productive role of women, and argues that it is the state's responsibility to support the social reproduction role mostly played by women of caring and nurturing children. So mo ni siya kanang exclusive gift for women alone. They can conceive a child, and they can conceive a child, which means that they must be offered with utmost care, because this this happening, or this circumstance, the the conceiving of child is a is an economic factor, because Once na manganak na siya, then magulang-gulang na ng bata, makadevelop ang mga skills, undergo siya og certain processes, then this child kay kuha na siya, it is one of the economic factors. Makonsider na siya og one of the economic factors. God treats development as complex process that is influenced by political, social, and economic factors rather than as a state or stage development. Arising from God analysis is the need of women to organize themselves into more effective political voice in order to strengthen their legal rights and increase the number of women in decision making. Okay, so for them, development is not an easy process. It is a complex process wherein there are so many factors that tends to contribute to achieve the desired goal uh, of that particular country. So to say, God approach is much more reliable or much more visionary among the three of them because it it doesn't focus on what the first factor is it doesn't focus on only one gender or only one sex. The second, it is visionary in nature because only it doesn't only concern with the women's issue but both sexes issue. The third one is that it doesn't only focus on the establishment of women or men in development and doesn't only focus on the developmental process, but it focuses on the process as a whole in developing and putting care for women and men, for they are considered as an economic factor. That's my point. Muna siya point sa God. Like, i-readdress siya ang problem using gender analysis approach to develop a broader view. So that is all for my report, and the next one will be reported by my co-reporters. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Angelica Vinluan and I'm going to tackle the topic of practical approaches to the development of women. The debate on women and men has not just been about the theories on the role of women, but also on the practical approaches adopted to secure women's development. Over the years, the practical approaches to developmental challenges relating to women have been developed and changed in response to criticisms and the growth of a better understanding of the dynamics relating to women's development. So these approaches are: first, the welfare approach. This approach defined efforts for women until 1970s. This was most popular in developing countries. The focus was on mother and child health, child care, and nutrition. Population control or family planning, as it later came to be known, was a major focus as well due to the link made between population growth and poverty. One of the significant features of the women in development is the focus on addressing courses women's practical needs through an enhancement of opportunities for paid work. Various economic projects ensuring credit facilities, jobs, etc. were undertaken. So, apart from employing advocacy strategies, many welfare-oriented projects providing credit facilities, technology transfers, and jobs were the tools of the women in development strategies and practitioners. Also, women in development focused on efforts at enhancing women's household management and family planning skills and methods. The proponents saw women in terms of what they could offer to achievement of development rather than otherwise. In the welfare approach, motherhood is the most important role for women in society. This means that their major concern has been with meeting practical gender needs relating to women's reproductive role. Second is the equity approach. The main aim of this approach is to eliminate discrimination. Feminist calls for gender equality were important in bringing about this approach. It emphasized the revaluing of women's contribution and share of benefits from development. It dealt with both the productive and reproductive roles as a responsibility of government. This means that the approach will address policy issues and legal measures as a means of bringing equity. So women should have equal opportunities with men. It aims to achieve women's justice in development processes. Women are seen as active participants in development, and it recognizes the triple role of women and aims to address the strategic needs of gender through direct state intervention, granting political and economic autonomy to women, and reducing inequality among men. The equity approach, in contrast to the welfare approach, saw women as active participants organizing to bring about necessary changes. The third is the anti-poverty approach. This approach focuses on both the productive and reproductive role of women with an emphasis on the satisfaction of basic needs and the productivity of women. A key operational strategy required access to income generation and wage employment. The tendency with this approach was to reinforce the basic needs and ignores women's strategic needs. Its purpose is to ensure that poor women increase their productivity. Women's poverty is seen as the problem of underdevelopment and not for subordination. And it recognizes the productive role of women and seeks to meet practical gender needs to earn income.
Good day, everyone. I am Liezel Ventolero, and I am your third and last reporter for Lesson 22. So, Ms. Vinluan already discussed the first three practical approaches to the development of women, and I am here to discuss the fourth and the fifth practical approach. So, the fourth practical approach is the efficiency approach. It aims to have increased production and economic growth with an emphasis on full use of human resources. This approach succeeded in bringing the concerns about women and gender into the mainstream of development. So basically, the efficiency approach generally focuses on women as employees, which were implemented in the 1980s, and its goal is to boost productivity and economic growth by maximizing the use of human resources. Meanwhile, advocates of this approach argue that gender analysis makes a good economic sense. Why? Simply because taking into account men's and women's roles and responsibilities when planning development activities improves efficiency and ensures that both men and women can contribute to national development. Fortunately, this approach succeeded in bringing the concerns about women and gender into the mainstream of development. And the fifth and last practical approach is the empowerment approach. It aims to increase the self-reliance of women and to influence change at the policy, legislative, societal, economic, and other levels to their advantage. Awareness raising and situates women firmly as active participants in ensuring change takes place is the main strategy of empowerment approach. So empowerment approach is an approach popular among third world feminist and indigenous organizations. The aim of this approach is to increase self-reliance of women and to influence change at the policy, legislative, societal, economic, and other levels to their advantage. And its main strategy is creating awareness, and it also promotes women as active players in bringing about change. However, empowerment has been misunderstood to be an end rather than means, and this resulted in poor women becoming very knowledgeable about issues while realizing little change to their material situation. So, to summarize everything in Lesson 22, the Women in Development or WID, the Women and Development or WAD, the Gender and Development or GOD evolves towards achieving women empowerment since the mid of 9th century and up to the present. Aside from that, several practical approaches have been utilized to underscore the role of women in nation building and vice versa. The evolution of these theories and approaches only states that women empowerment is a developing principle alongside development of the country. That's all for our report, and I hope that you have learned something from our discussions. And I want you to know that every girl has the voice to change the world. Thank you, everyone, and God bless.